Hello and welcome to another Tri-tutors video. In today's video, we're going to be summarizing some key points from Act 5 of Shakespeare's Hamlet. So we're not going to go through all the details, we're just going through those key plot points that are really important to know in terms of following the sequence of events in the story. So Act 5, Scene 1, we start off the scene where we see grave diggers. They are preparing Ophelia's grave and they are debating the circumstances around her death, whether her drowning was accidental or intentional. Hamlet and Horatio then approach. Hamlet picks up a skull which has been sort of dug up and chucked aside by one of the grave diggers, and he contemplates the nature of death. So that's a major theme that runs throughout the play. Obviously, it is a tragedy, and so there's a lot of death that happens, and we're going to see in the next scene even more deaths occur. But what we also see is that Hamlet has a lot of contemplation, a lot of monologues and soliloquies where he contemplates death. And here is one of those famous scenes. Whenever you even think of Hamlet, or if you search it up, you see that picture of Hamlet holding the skull and contemplating the nature of death and the cycle of life. The funeral procession then for Ophelia arrives and comes towards the grave. Hamlet, remember, is returning from the ship, right? He's just got off the boat. He's re-arrived in Denmark, or he's just come back to Denmark, and he is unaware that Ophelia has died. And when Hamlet sees it's Ophelia, he is absolutely devastated and filled with grief. Ophelia's brother Laertes is also filled with grief, and he has jumped into the grave and is crying and weeping really loudly. And so when Hamlet sees this, he comes up from behind sort of the tree where he's been hiding and observing, and he jumps into the grave as well and starts weeping, and he starts fighting Laertes, and they start comparing how sad they truly are that Ophelia has died. So in this moment, we can see that maybe Hamlet's feelings towards Ophelia were quite genuine, and maybe he was saying all those things to really try and sell that idea that he was mad to try and get a confession out of Claudius. The fight is broken up, but both of them are still quite angry with each other and vow to get revenge. Act 5, Scene 2, Hamlet recounts his story of his escape to Horatio, and he tells how he actually swapped the letters, that he found the letter that Claudius had given Rosencrantz and Guildenstern, which had ordered his own execution, and he had changed the letter to now order Rosencrantz and Guildenstern's execution by the King of England. So in this case, this example, this really shows us how even though Hamlet is full of inaction, right? If we think about this whole play, and it's one of his sort of tragic flaws, or fatal flaws that leads to him becoming a tragic hero, is that he's just full of inaction, right? He never actually kills Claudius. If he had just done it in the first act or the second act, then this whole story wouldn't have occurred, and the whole tragedy, all the other tragedies wouldn't have occurred. But here he actually shows action, and the same case as when he kills Polonius, right? He shows a sense of irrationality and needless aggression. And so we can see that he has these bouts of inaction, which is sort of replaced, or in order to mitigate that, he also has these bouts of irrational actions, right? Where he does these irrationally aggressive things to counter his frustration with his inaction. And Horatio is actually quite shocked at what he recounts, as even though he doesn't really like these friends, Rosencrantz and Guildenstern, Hamlet doesn't really like them. It's quite a serious thing to do, to order them to their deaths. Osric then comes in. He is a servant, and he announces the king's idea for a duel to take place between Laertes and Hamlet. Hamlet readily agrees to this. The duel is arranged, and as Hamlet and Laertes shake hands, Hamlet apologizes to Laertes and blames his actions on his madness. So remember, Laertes is quite mad at Hamlet. He's been responsible for killing Polonius' father, and he thinks that he's also might be responsible for Ophelia's death as well. And so Hamlet does apologize, but he also blames it on his actions, so it's not perhaps a true apology in that way. The fencing begins, and Gertrude mistakenly drinks the wine which Claudius has poisoned. So Claudius and Laertes have plotted and planned, and they've decided that Laertes is going to poison the tip of his sword to make sure that Hamlet is going to die, and Claudius, as a backup, is going to make sure that if Hamlet wins the duel, he's going to offer him some wine to drink, and that wine will be poisonous. He does offer the wine to drink to Hamlet when he wins one of the rounds, but Hamlet refuses. Gertrude does not know about this plan. She mistakenly drinks the wine, which Claudius has poisoned, and subsequently dies. Hamlet and Laertes, in their battle, in their scuffle, they both land up dropping their swords and swapping swords. So now Hamlet is left wielding Laertes' poison-tipped sword. Laertes is then wounded by his own sword, and once he realizes that he's going to die, he confesses that he was in on Claudius's plan with the poisoned wine and the sword. Hamlet gets really angry in this moment, and he goes and he stabs Claudius. He also forces him to drink the wine to make sure that Claudius is going to die. Hamlet then forgives Laertes. He then falls to the ground because he's also been touched by the poisoned sword, and he realizes he's going to die as well. And in that moment, he makes Horatio promise to tell his story to the world. Fornsbus then arrives after Hamlet has just died, and he takes over the Danish throne. So the ending of this, obviously, we knew going into the story that it's tragedy. I mean, the actual original title of the play was The Tragedy of Hamlet, Prince of Denmark. So the tragedy can be seen because most of our main characters land up dead. Another aspect of a Shakespearean tragedy is that we have a tragic hero, and Hamlet is a tragic hero. So a tragic hero is the protagonist who is heroic, who is a good person, but they have one fatal flaw. They have one thing that sort of undermines that goodness and leads to their downfall. And so in Hamlet's case, it could be the fact that he is indecisive and that he overthinks. Ultimately, he's a good man with all the best intentions, but that tragic flaw, that idea of the fact that he overthinks, he's indecisive, and he's predisposed to inaction lead to his downfall and ultimately the downfall of others. I hope that you found this video helpful in terms of summarizing those key plot points. Please remember to like the video and to subscribe to the channel, and I'll see you in the next one.